Mr. Alan Wilson was elected South Carolina's 51st Attorney General on November 2nd, 2010, becoming the youngest Attorney General in the nation. In that role, Mr. Wilson serves as the state's Chief Prosecutor, Chief Securities Officer, and the state's Chief Legal Counsel. His office is comprised of more than 200 employees, nearly 75 attorneys, who manage nearly 8,000 active case files. Prior to his election, Mr. Wilson served as an Assistant Solicitor and Assistant Attorney General. He is a graduate of Francis Marion University and the University of South Carolina School of Law. Wilson and his wife, Jennifer, have 2 young children, Michael and Anna Grace. Please help me in welcoming State Attorney General Alan Wilson.
I'll shed the jacket. Not that formal here. First of all, thanks for having me. A lot of you are probably here for credit, or I don't know why you want to come here, a politician and a lawyer talk, and you probably think it's going to be boring. But I was thinking about what I would want to hear if I were coming to this event as a college student. So I threw something together that I think you might find interesting. At least I hope you do. What I'm going to do is this isn't going to be a lecture. I'm not going to preach at you. I'm going to have a conversation with you, and I'm going to get a little bit Socratic. You know what that means for you pre-law people, right? I'm going to engage. I'm going to ask you questions. Probably I see a lot of young ladies here. And I think that's pretty cool that you're here. I don't know if you're here to see the fellas, if you're here to learn what it's like to be masculine. But I'm glad you're here because I like to see the 2 different perspectives. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, personally and professionally. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm here to talk to you all about masculinity in our current culture, what it means to be a man. And you're probably asking me, what is a guy who's elected to office, who's an attorney, what qualifies him, what qualifies me to give this lecture? Well, I'm here to tell you absolutely nothing. I'm going to tell you about myself, give you the context so that you can give whatever appropriate weight to what I'm going to talk to you about, and you can weigh it however you want. But I'm hoping that some of the things that I say to you tonight register, because a lot of what I'm going to tell you is things that I've experienced in my own personal life about what it means to be a real man, to be masculine in our society. And we're going to do a brief PowerPoint that's going to use pop culture as an example of how masculinity is defined. But first I want to talk to you a little bit about myself, because a lot of what I'm talking to you about on this PowerPoint slide I get from my own personal life. Now, you heard in the opening remarks that I'm the youngest Attorney General in the country. I'm married with 2 kids. Those are some things that I'm really proud of. But my desire to go into public service began a long time ago, probably even before I was your age, probably as a teenager. I come from a family where there's 4 boys. My 3 brothers and I are all Eagle Scouts. We were all members of Kiwanis. We were all publicly active in our communities, in our churches, in our youth groups. And after that, after college, I went into the military. I'm currently Lieutenant Colonel in the Army National Guard, and I think Lieutenant Colonels is old guys. I remember being a second lieutenant at age 22, and the colonel was the old man. And at the ripe old age of 39, I found that I'm now the old guy, but I don't feel any different than I did at 22. And for those of you who are in that age group, it flies by like that. A little bit of military background. I went in the National Guard. I deployed to Iraq in 2003 and 2004 and got back in 2005. Spent 366 days in the sand. I was actually stationed in a base right outside of Ur. It was at the ancient site of Abraham's birthplace. If you know anything about Old Testament history, I actually was at Abraham's house. I walked the cities of ancient Babylon. I went through Baghdad. I actually went up through Mosul, was on the Turkish border. Almost got shot by Turkish soldiers. That was another story I'll tell you another time. Was able to, with the unit I was in, we saw very little combat, but the combat we did see, it was pretty harrowing, and those were defining moments of my life. When you face your mortality, you kind of dig deep and you want to figure, what is it that makes me me? And I remember there was a day in August of 2004 when our unit came under attack, and some of the things that happened that day really defined me and actually kind of set me on the trajectory where I am today. Those thoughts, those memories that I have are going to play in a minute to this role of masculinity that we're going to talk about. But when I got back from Iraq, I was already through law school. I decided to go become a prosecutor. And so I went across the river and I was an assistant solicitor, which is the same thing as an assistant district attorney, and I worked over there prosecuting mostly violent crimes cases. I was there for a few years, and I came to the Attorney General's office, and I prosecuted cases that involved some horrific crimes. I prosecuted one case in which this young woman from about the ages of 12 to 15 had been raped over a period of 4 years, numerous times by this gentleman. I shouldn't call him a gentleman, but this guy. And we went to trial at the age of 19. He stopped molesting her at 17. At 19, we took him to trial, and after about 8 days of presenting testimony, very graphic testimony, I sent it to the jury. The jury came back with a guilty verdict, and this young woman was standing with me as the judge was reading the sentence. And this young woman began to cry. And she and I had gotten to be pretty close at the time, because we'd spent a lot of time together in the victim's advocate, because we had to get into her life and get into the facts of the case. And as she started to cry, I kind of whispered to her, I'm like, why are you crying? You know, because I mean, this is exactly what I prepared you for. This is exactly what you wanted. And before I tell you what she said, a little thing about the defendant. The defendant was not only a retired police officer, he was her grandfather. And he told her, for that period of time, for those years, he says, if you ever tell anyone that I'm doing this to you, they won't believe you, because I'm a cop and you're a kid. Now, how does a 13-year-old girl reconcile that fact? And so she kept quiet. He told her, if you tell anyone, they'll take you away. They'll put you in foster care. And so this girl was basically in a prison without being in prison. And he told her, remember one thing he told her that I'll never forget, he says, all I need is one juror out of 12 to believe me, and I'll walk, and you're gone. And I know how to get it past a jury. Well, she started to cry because when the judge read the sentence, and by the way, he got 18 years in prison, at age 67, opposed to a death sentence for him. As they shackled him up and walked him, and he shuffled out in the belly chains out of the courtroom, I looked to her and I was asking, why are you upset? She goes, I'm not upset. I'm not crying because I'm upset. I'm crying because for the first time in my life, I'm not a victim. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not a victim. He took the power from me and held it over me for all these years and used me as like I was a piece of meat, and now today he is walking out in chains and I'm walking on for the rest of my life. And to me that was powerful, because a man who had exerted himself and used his age, his status in the community, his power over this woman so that he could rob her of her innocence over and over and over again. He used that against her, and that very day I got to play a small role in liberating her. There were court reporters, there were judges, there were jurors, there were police officers, investigators, courtroom staff. I had assistant, I had another attorney on the case with me. We had a victim's advocate, a whole lot of people in the criminal justice system. And my little sliver of it is I got to set that woman, I don't know where she is today. I haven't seen her since that day. It's been about 5 years ago. But wherever she is, whatever the path she chose for herself, I got to play a role in that. And that was a powerful influence to me, which probably made me very passionate about victims' rights and violence against women and issues like that, especially violence against children. And it's ultimately what led me to run for Attorney General. And I'll give you this little testimony, a little background in the military, the background in working in the courtroom. Now, let me tell you something. It is an ego rush to be in the courtroom and present cases to a jury. It's fun. In fact, I remember when I was a young prosecutor, the senior prosecutor that was training me, he said, this is a joke, he said, Alan, being in the courtroom is the most fun you can have with your clothes on. And you know what? He was right in a way, because it really is, you're like an actor, a producer, and a director, telling a story and orchestrating the entire trial for a period of a week or more. And I got to do that, and I got to represent the lives, many of them ruined lives, of children and women who have been raped, or molested, or robbed, or somehow deprived of some liberty. And that is a powerful thing that influenced me. And so when I was asked to come here and talk to you about what it means to be a man, I started drawing on my own personal experiences as a soldier who's seen combat, as an attorney who's been in combat in the courtroom, as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a brother. You know, I told you earlier my 3 brothers are all Eagle Scouts. They're also all in the military. I got one brother right now, 25 years old. He's on his way to Afghanistan next week. I got another brother who's home visiting, the surgeon in the Navy. He's on his way to Italy. I got another brother who's a captain in the National Guard, and he lives here locally. And so we're a military family, we pride ourselves on public service, And when I was asked here to come talk about masculinity, I said, well, I can only draw upon my personal experiences. So I told you those things about me, so that you can just have a little snippet. You won't know that much about me when you leave. Most of you probably won't remember my name a week from tonight. But what I want you to remember is I want you to remember whatever I'm telling you is based solely on my experiences. Now, we all have preconceived notions of what it means to be a man. Where's my... Carissa, could you come up here? Carissa's a student here at USC, and she is an intern in our office, and she's assisting me this evening, and she's agreed to be my clicker. So let's go ahead and click to the first slide. You can just... Now, as we go through the slides, I want you to read these questions. What molds our views of what it means to be masculine? Who are your role models of masculinity? And does society define masculine roles, or do you define it for yourself? And I'm going to draw a complete circle back to these questions. But as we talk about this, and ladies, you can do this. You can invert it for femininity. You can flip it around for yourselves. Or if you just want to understand what it's like to be a man, God forbid you should ever have to understand that craziness, but we can engage in this discussion as well. And I do want the women to participate. But be thinking about these questions as we go through the slides. Now let's go to the first slide. Click to the very first slide. Now, after these up here, okay, now some of these pictures are going to tell my age because I'm going over pop culture, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. But when we think about what does it mean, for those of you who are interested in sports and athletics, when you think of a man, what does it mean to be masculine? I went on the internet and I found some photos. Now I'm not going to lie to you, the one in the middle with Jadavian, that's masculine. Well, I still love talking about that scene. But you look at The Rock and the Ultimate Fighters, and you look at the NASCAR and the basketball players, and you got Tom Brady up there in the corner. When you look at these people, for those of you who are athletically minded, or you like the sports, maybe that's how you judge what it means to be masculine. And pop culture tells us that those people are masculine. Because, just look at them. Everything they're doing exudes masculinity. So that might be something that informs us or reflects to us what it means to be masculine. One question, going back to that first question is, as we go through these slides, does pop culture reflect what masculinity is? Or do we act masculine in certain ways and pop culture is just a mirror? In other words, does pop culture say, this is what masculinity is, you all have to follow it? Or does it just reflect what our definition of masculinity is? You'll understand that in a second. Go to the next one. You got sports, then you look at Donald Trump. You look at Steve Jobs, you look at all these people that are in the boardroom or the courtroom, or maybe they're an entertainer who's opened up $1 million business. Maybe they've changed the culture of our country because of something they've invented or a show that they're on. We look at those people as successful. They're masculine. It's not just the NASCAR, the basketball players, the football players, but masculinity. Do we want to be powerful and rich and famous? Is that what defines? Is that what it means to be masculine? Chris, why don't you click to the next slide? I like this one because some people are interested in politics, and so I went and I just grabbed a bunch of presidents. Okay, you got John F. Kennedy, and in his day he was quite the masculine president. And you look at Dwight Eisenhower, who was a general. You can't be more masculine than a general. And you got Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and Barack Obama. All of them up there doing something that looks, or they're appearing to be masculine. Whether it's president or mayor of a small town, we look at political leaders. Some of them are people we want to emulate. Some are people that we don't want to be anything like. And usually it's the latter, unfortunately. But they are all doing something that is masculine. So that is part of our society. That is part of our pop culture. Not just sports, not just the boardroom, but in politics. That is also what helps us define masculinity. I want you to toggle forward one more slide. Then you think about the military. I talked to you about my military experiences. When you think about what it means to be masculine, the military it just drips with masculinity. You look at what these guys are doing. You look at these powerful men. You look at Patton there in the middle in front of the flag, the Marines. You got the Air Force, the Navy. That's masculine. When you think of the military, it's a very masculine thing to do because it's rugged. Now, one thing that all of these slides have in common, look for common themes. Why do we see, first off, does anyone disagree with me that these pictures I'm showing you is not masculine? Let me does everyone agree that those are kind of masculine shots? Would y'all all agree? What makes them masculine? In a minute I'm going to ask for a hand. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is where I show my age. I was thinking of, actors in Hollywood, and like in the 80s, I was thinking, Indiana Jones fan. I love Rambo, Rocky, and all those. So I grabbed some old guys. Schwarzenegger's in the middle because he was also a governor, so I can double dip on the politician. I was thinking, you know, you got superheroes down there, you got Blade over there, and then, of course, I was thinking, what other masculine person can I think of? And a girl mom said, how about James Bond? You don't get better than that, right, as far as masculinity. These movies have men in them that portray different kinds of heroes, and they're all masculine. Again, what makes them masculine? I'm going to ask for a show of hands in a minute when we get to the end. You know, you got Brad Pitt up there in the upper corner. Anyone ever seen that movie? It's like one of my favorite movies when he plays Achilles. That guy was a bad you-know-what. I love watching him fight. But, you know, let's go ahead and ask for a show of hands right now. What is it about each of these people, or each of these pictures, whether it's a sports picture, a political picture, a military picture, a pop culture movie, what is it about them? What do they all have in common? There's no wrong answer. Just give me your best guess. Someone raise your hand.
We know them.
What's that?
We know them.
Well, we do know them. But what is it we know about them or the character they're playing or what they're doing in that picture that's masculine? What makes it, we know they're masculine, but define masculine. I mean, you're on something. Don't give up on me yet.
It's being recognized for being at the top, I guess. You know?
Okay, but women can be recognized for being at the top. There are lots of powerful women out there. I mean, you're the brave guy in the room, so I'm giving you kudos because you're the first hand that got raised. You're starting something. You know, a woman can do what you just said, but that doesn't make her masculine, right? All right, I saw your hand and then your hand. Let's go with you first.
I don't agree with this, but physical appearance, obviously, all the pictures you showed, they're all rugged, strong, muscular.
Rugged, strong, but strength, powerful, right? They're all strong. They lack what? Weakness. None of them are weak. So somehow, through our pop culture, through our society, we place a premium on strength, and we look at weakness as not masculine, right?
Yeah, I mean, just point out for that, a lot of those, especially right here, a lot of these characters, they're not vulnerable, and if they do show any sort of vulnerableness, it's usually to their detriment. So there's no proper vulnerability. I mean, I just think of Bruce Wayne. Anytime he's vulnerable, he always gets stabbed in the back or something like that. So, there's always a negative to vulnerability.
That's right. They're not vulnerable. To be vulnerable, these guys don't expose their vulnerabilities very well. Yes, sir.
They also all take action and fight for what they believe in.
That's right. They're passionate about a cause, something they're doing. Agree or disagree with them. And I didn't put any villains up here that I'm aware of. I don't see any villains up there, but they're all, they don't show weakness. They're not vulnerable, or at least they're not vulnerable in what way? Starts with an E. Emotionally. You guys are on it, man. You guys are sharp. Okay, because if you're emotional, if you show your heart, what is that descriptive of? That's a female attribute. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying that's what our at least in the 50s, and it permeates through show from the 50s like Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie and Harriet, or the Andy Griffith Show. None of you probably watched that stuff. I still watch that stuff. But it's always, or I Love Lucy, you know, it's always the guy goes off to work, the woman stays home. You know, the woman's the one that cries. She's always the one meddling in the husband's business. Lucy always wants to go, get in the show business with Ricky. You know, if you watch those old shows, the man is always the breadwinner. The man is always the strong one. The man is never the one that cries, never the one that shows his vulnerability. You know, and that created or gave birth to the society we're in now. Now, I think some of those are starting to change, and we'll get into that in just a second. Anyone want to add any other thoughts to the questions I've just posed to you? Oh, go. You go ahead, Dr. Betty.
That was seem to compete too, like the sports guys and the politicians and these guys are both sort of
Competitive.
They're all very, very competitive.
They're winners. That's right.
Yeah, jumping off that, this especially implies it's them versus the world. They work alone, right? Not really a communal idea here.
Let me ask you a question. Do we, as a society, decide this is what masculinity is, and then Hollywood and the entertainment industry tries to catch up? Or do you think the entertainment industry and Hollywood and pop culture create what they want masculinity to be, and we're trying to follow it. Which do y'all think? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? You follow that logic? So someone take a guess. Yes, ma'am?
I think that society creates the gender stereotypes and that the media fears them back to us.
Did y'all hear that? You think society creates it, and so give me an example of how society creates that. And then this is a mirror, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how does society? Can I
I know,
get
like anthropology, like anthropological.
Oh, you're going down a road I really want to go down.
Like traditional gender roles stem from the agricultural revolution, and like the age of, like before the agricultural revolution, it was more of a matriarchal society because women owned more property than men did because women were like hunter. Men were the hunters and women were the gatherers, and so women tended to have more resources of food. And then after the agricultural revolution, men became the farmers and women stayed in the home and took care of the children, and so men then owned the property. And so it redefined gender roles in society.
That's actually pretty interesting. There's a hand back here, then I got a thought for you.
I was just going to say, in response to your previous question, about which came first, I
Yeah.
think it's a little both. It's kind of like an endless cycle.
They feed each
Society
other.
will create the stereotype, and we don't just boost it and make it bigger than it really is, and make it just hyper, whatever it is.
And by the way, there's no wrong answer. I mean, everything y'all are saying is right. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds, and I want to hear what you have to say. How many guys here played with dolls when you were a kid? Come on, who played with a doll? Who played with a doll? Come on, raise your hand. All right, how many guys here play with an action figure? Guys, that's a doll. But we don't call them dolls. They're action figures. How many girls here play with dolls? I mean, come on, ladies. All right. How many of you play with action figures? We got some. Well, we got some. All right, got some tomboys in the room. That's awesome. But you know, we have these big Star Wars characters, or the big. My little boy has all the Avengers. He's 5 years old. He's got all the Avengers, and he's got Thor and Hulk and Iron Man and Captain America. They're like this tall. And my wife is like, "Have you seen Michael's dolls?" I'm like, "They're action figures, Jennifer. They're action." My son doesn't play with dolls. It's amazing. When you look in elementary school and you see kids carrying books, how do boys carry books? Like this, right? Or in a backpack, or slung over one shoulder. How do girls carry books? Or like this, right? What else did women carry like this back in the day? Babies. Now, I'm not saying that's tied together, but she said anthropology, I didn't say it. Okay? And I'm just throwing it out there.
I was just going to say, I don't really think, I think that if society decides it and then the media mirrors it back, I don't think it's so much as a mirror, but it just perverts what we think. So G.I. Joes started out as like average Joes, and then they increasingly got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then guys can't, it's hard for guys to look like that. And Barbies were pretty, and then they got bigger and bigger, or smaller and smaller, and it's hard for girls to look like that. So
More anatomically pronounced in certain
Exactly.
areas that are unrealistic for young girls.
And I think it's the
See,
same.
there's a diplomatic way to say it. I suppose her boobs were big. That's
That was it, yeah.
That was actually, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because in a minute you're going to see something that's just kind of funny. Yes, sir.
What we're talking about here is more ideals in entertainment. So I mean, we're not really talking about cultural realities as they are. And that's what makes me think about, for example, in these cases, this is an ideal of masculinity. And as you can see, it kind of changes over time, because, you know, the ideal man changes over time, but it's also for entertainment purposes. So for example, I mean, American Pie, everyone would say, you know, that's so funny, or it's very entertaining, but then, you know, when we go to other countries and they say, oh, this is how Americans are, we say, no, we're not. So I mean, you gotta kind of take this with a grain of salt at the same time, because there are those ideals, but there's also entertainment. But then there's cultural realities. So you gotta kind of keep those
Valid
separate.
point. Let's click to the next one. Now, I look here. Now, first off, you see Ron Burgundy, you know, popular culture takes some things to the extreme. Yeah, anyone ever seen Anchorman? Love Anchorman. Many Leatherbound books, probably smells of rich mahogany, guys. I love that scene when he goes up and tries to pick her up. That is awesome. And I don't know if you know, it's kind of a big deal. And you know, that is a great movie because it absolutely exaggerates what an anchorman was in the 70s, and it just kind of takes, you know, masculinity to an obscene, ridiculous, funny end. You look at Van Wilder, and that's a blurry picture, but I love that movie. That was a movie that came out about 10, 12 years ago. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. Put it in your queue. You look at in the middle, you've got the video games. You know, video games is now the new medium. You know, kids are playing Halo, or they're playing all these war games that are very realistic, and all the characters are huge. The Hangover, I think y'all mentioned The Hangover was in the notes that has been discussed here before, that, you know, that it's a funny movie, but if you want to be critical of it, you know, it says that's the way to have, that is the kind of bachelor party you want to have. You know, they make it funny, but, you know, we take ideas of masculinity and we take them to their extreme for entertainment value, which is kind of tying what you just said. Does anybody know what that character is on the far right?
He-Man.
Okay, He-Man. She was just talking about a minute ago that the dolls were getting, I mean, the male dolls were getting more and more masculine. And I'll be honest with you, I used to think that was cool when I was a kid, but now it almost looks like homoerotic. He's got the loincloth, and you know, he's got the big blonde hair, you know. But in all seriousness, I loved He-Man when I was a little boy. Loved He-Man, loved G.I. Joe, Thundercats, did all that stuff when I was 10 years old. But even our toys, and you made the example about Barbie. Barbie's an impossible standard. I'm never going to look like He-Man. I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm not going to have those kind of muscles, and we're not going to be, you know, we don't all look like Achilles or Indiana Jones. Charlie Sheen is an example. I use this because I think this is a funny show, but it has done some damage culturally, I think, because, you know, he's the guy in that show. What did he do every single episode? Just like James Bond, different girl, right? I mean, so the guy who can sow the seed the most is the most masculine. That's the message it sends. Agree or disagree, that's what I interpret. You know, this guy talks about drugs, talks about prostitution, and there's a model in every episode up until they killed him off. And so he was actually the funny one on the show, and we laughed at it, but, you know, does anybody see anything different about his character on 2.5 Men? Anyone ever watch that show? Did y'all watch that show? Is that an old guy show? I want to be cool and hip like y'all. That's an old guy show. And you know, but I just picked that one because of the lifestyle that he led. They kind of glamorized it. It glorified it. And you see a lot of these reality TV shows. One of my wife's sorority sisters is on one of those Housewives of somewhere in the world shows. I think the LA one or whatever. They went to college together, and she was telling me about the girl, that she was in anything like that on TV that she was in college. But, you know, you look at those shows and the Kardashians, and by the way, I hate reality TV stars. People who are famous for being famous, they never got that. But they kind of glamorize the I mean, I don't know if it's an indictment on society, if they truly define what it means to be masculine, or if they reflect it, or if they exaggerate it and make it more of entertainment value. But I think that it does affect our notions of what it means to be a man. Why don't you go ahead and click over. Now, these pictures. By the way, how am I on time? Okay, we're good. Now, look at these pictures. What do y'all see up there? Just describe for me the pictures that you see there. Anyone?
Being a father.
Yeah, I see. Okay. I mean, what's this guy doing in the upper left corner? I mean, he's screaming baby. By the way, every one of these pictures I have done. I have been the guy in every one of these photos. I actually once, this picture of the guy, the baby born carrier, he's cooking in the kitchen. I have actually given a speech to a room twice this size with my daughter strapped to my chest because I could not find a babysitter. Yeah, well, she's 3 now, but she was about 6 months old, and I was walking around with the baby giving a speech. I've done that. I cook. You got a guy out there playing checkers with his son. Another guy's changing a diaper. You got the guy working.
Or maybe in your teens, maybe a little bit older, so you don't have family yet. You don't see that other side of it where once you have a family, once you have kids, you can't be the manly man all the time. It takes a compromise to have a relationship at work. And sometimes if your wife is sick or has something that she needs to do, you have to step up in her place and you have to take on that role. I know, talking to my dad, it's a picture for the same set, or checkers. Like, I played chess with my dad growing up, and he said that one of the times he was most proud of me was the one time I beat him. Because I learned how to play so enough where I beat him that one time, and I was so happy, and I was gloating and making a big deal out of it, but sometimes I had done something better than him, and I just gone beyond.
And that's cool because now you know, I guess I'm the only guy, I'm 40 in July. July 16th is my birthday. But I've been 39, y'all haven't. I can tell you on the other side of marriage and a family and a house and a mortgage and a career, which are all things that most of you are looking to do, you get a different perspective. And you know what? Before I say my thought, I saw some hands go up, and I want to make sure I get y'all's thoughts more than mine.
I think a lot of it highlights the vulnerability, like you said, and the emotions. We have issues where invisibility and muscular strength, physicality, and these emotions that we said at some of it, but that's classified as really show, you know, the ability of love, the ability of time, and they're very normal to be with yourself below someone else to constantly, you know, this might not be the picture of Hollywood masculinity, but in reality,
That is exactly what I was going for with this. That's really good. No, and listen, and by the way, there are no right or wrong answers, and there are no right or wrong perceptions. We're all going to see things differently here. You may see something different. You may even disagree with my interpretation, and you're just as right as I am. That's what's so good about this exercise. That's what I saw. That these pictures don't show strength. They show another strength. They show compassion. They show love. They show emotional. They show vulnerability. Maybe it's not vulnerability. Maybe it's needing help. You got a guy out there praying. You've got another guy there crying. You know, that's emotional.
I was thinking like distinguishing between the difference between the pictures we saw before and these ones. I mean, in culture nowadays, when you were saying, you know, they might look at these and think of it as but I think, and you were talking about this passion, like there's other things in there. I think it can be simplified a little bit more. So we're like, for example, in the first picture, that's considered, you know, strength and all this, what masculinity is about. But if you look at their goals in a sense, most of them are very selfish. Versus, so for example, their sacrifices that men are supposed to make are very selfish in that case. You know, it's all about themselves and their own glory. Versus here, they're still sacrificing. They're doing what men are supposed to do. You know, they're all sacrificing for the family and whatnot. But it's considered from a very kind of shallow cultural standpoint of, oh, well, they're doing women's work or whatever. They're weak. They're asking for help and things like that. They're weak, but they're doing the hard thing no matter what. And that's what I think when I look at it. I think that's the difference.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. That's a good perception. Yes, sir.
I feel like the pictures before were more like, it was like what the ideal man is, but this is like what the realistic man is. Like a man at war is probably going to cry because he's going to see some pretty messed up stuff, and he's going to cook. Like that's all stuff that we're going to do in real life, and all that other stuff is like movies, and not everybody's going to be an NBA star or football star, and that's why those are looked at as masculine. Because society makes those as masculine, and this is like real life.
The reason that picture of that guy there in Kevlar with the tear going down his cheek is because, in my own personal, I gave y'all a very brief clip of my life. But I remember that day. There were 2 days actually that were I faced my mortality. And I cried. I cried, and I'm not ashamed of that. But I felt it was this very vulnerable thing to say I must die. That's very vulnerable. You start thinking about it. If I had been here instead of here, I wouldn't be here right now. And so that's why that spoke to me. But I mean that's an excellent question. Any other thoughts about this? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think especially going off the entertainment, that like we watch, you know, Braveheart, Gladiator, which are incredible movies, and we come away kind of saying, gosh, it would be so cool to like pick up, you know, the real broadsword and for what about this years ago, like, yeah, it's so much more difficult to fucking
I'm gonna get your question is how I'm on time. I'm very cognizant of your time, so.
Usually about 5 or 10 minutes.
We've got about 10 minutes. Is that okay? So I'll go ahead.
I don't think this is a new idea for this age. Because in one of my literature classes, we just read the Iliad, which has Achilles in it. And I don't know how much you know about the Iliad, but it was first a story named Hector, and he's ultimately killed by Achilles in battle. But before that, he's a great warrior. He defends Troy from the Greeks, and he kills all these people. But then when he's at home in the palace with his wife and a newborn child, he is so in love with his wife, and he absolutely adores his son, and he plays with them, and his child is afraid of him with his helmet and his armor on, so he takes it off to show him that he's not this monster covered in blood, but he's actually his father, and he does love him. And so,
Two sides of the same man, and it's just masculine in both of the world. Is there another thing here? I don't see, like the day your dad lets you, or not late, but the day you beat your dad in checkers, probably, chess, excuse me. I hope he lets you, no, I'm kidding. Honestly, my daughter's 3.5, my son will be 5 next week, and the day that they beat me in chess will be a day that I'm very proud of, because that is part of their development. And a father seeing his daughter beat him, to me that's masculine, because I'm raising my daughter up. That's how I look at that. Making my kids have a better life and be better than me in every way, shape, and form. We in the earlier slides, the movie stars and the athletes and the politicians, et cetera, and the video games and all that we saw some of those project strength, lack of emotion, a lack of vulnerability, and in others we see them show vulnerabilities, show emotions, show a softer side, maybe even show things that in the old days were left solely for women to do, kitchen, things like that. I love working in the kitchen. Anybody that says I'm assistant working in the kitchen, I'll laugh. Just kidding, I'm going to do. You guys don't laugh, right? But the point I'm making is there's no right or wrong definition of masculinity. You get to define it yourself. But the one thing that's not masculine is when you allow society to define it and you think it's manly to treat a woman a certain way because of what you see Charlie Sheen do or James Bond do it, or you think it's manly to ignore your kid. When society, when people start acting a certain way, that you have to be a bully. You have to be able to beat up on someone who's weaker than you or that looks different than you in order to make yourself masculine. You're limited. You're not masculine. So don't let society, I'm not saying some of those characters and some of those video games aren't masculine. I love a good shoot 'em up movie. But don't let that define for you what it means to be masculine. To me, that is the most masculine trait you can have, is to be individual. Be yourself. Be who you are. And don't be defined by the times. Don't be defined by pop culture or society. That is what I take away from that. Flip to the next one. And I just, at the very end, I pose those questions again for you as you leave here tonight. You go on about your life. Maybe just pose that to yourself. A question for the ladies here. This is truly, I'm a guy, so I'm asking the girls to help me understand something. What is it that women? What are attributes that you would look for in the ideal man? I'm being serious. I'm not trying to be. I see some of y'all. You're laughing, so I'm calling you. Gotcha. There's no wrong. But I mean, what do you think? It doesn't have to be you working at yourself. But what do you think women in general are looking for in a masculine man?
I think, I wouldn't regard someone as masculine unless they did have that sort of like real, like we were talking about, like compassionate, kind of like asking for help side of them.
Maybe humility.
Yeah, humility would be a big one.
Or courage to say, I feel a certain way. Those are courage. That's courage. Humility is very attractive. I imagine that's what my wife said. I'm not that humble in my house, but sometimes she humbles me. Any other ladies? This is for a moment. I'm going to to go home and I'm going to tell my wife I learned something, so help me out here. Well, I mean, what is it, the generic that we all look for that? Just one girl, one little speak up. Come on. Oh, we got.
I'm taking psychology business master, so we actually talked about
Awesome.
this in my class.
Help me.
So we pulled it out of class, and the thing that I can remember that the girls in my class were looking for is we wanted like a good Southern boy who was religious and would like go to church with them and like raise a family with them. And we wanted him to be like really respectful. But I just really good.
But that's interesting that you said that. A couple of years ago, my wife's cousin was graduating senior in high school. She's from Chicago. Real pretty girl. She came to live with us for the summer because she was looking, her parents taking her on a college tour to the North Midwest, Midwest, and out West in California. She actually knocked on the house. She was going to Pepperdine. And she came, she said, you know, I want to go and spend time with Alan and Jennifer. I want to tour the colleges in the Southeast. So she came to live with us for a month. I got her a job, and she lived with us for 4 or 5 weeks. And it was interesting because we took her to Whoppers, we took her to Furman, we took her to Clemson, we brought her to USC. I was pushing for Carolina real hard. I'm a Gamecock, although I got thrown with Clemson.
We didn't want to talk about
Okay, we won't talk about it. See, I'm vulnerable, guys. See, I'm asking. And then we took her to Wake Forest, we took her to Duke, some schools in North Carolina. She ultimately went to Wake Forest. It was down in Carolina to Wake Forest. But she opted to go to Wake Forest. Good school. They had a certain major there she liked. And she had been there about a year, and she called me her life coach because every time she's dating a guy or making a big decision, she quit calling Jennifer, her first cousin. She started calling me, and my wife's like, my family calls you now more than they call me. But she'd always call me and ask me questions, and she said, actually, I'm sorry, let me rewind. Before she made the decision to go to college, she says, I really like Pepperdine, I really like UNC and Lake. What should I do? And I went to a fundamental question. I said, Kelly, where do you ultimately want to live? Do you see, or where do you want to live, and what kind of guy do you want to marry? You want to marry a California guy, or do you want to marry a Southern guy? And she says, why do you ask? I'm like, just law of probability. It's irrelevant who you want to marry. But the law of probability, the law of averages, is if you go to college in a certain area of the country, there's a much stronger chance you will reside in that area of the country and will probably build a family in that area of the country. So don't think about school for a second. Think about where you see yourself. Now, that might not be the question you should have asked, but I knew what values she had, but she says, oh, I want to marry a Southern boy. I like Southern guys, because she hung out with my brother and all his friends that summer and just fell in love. She loves Southern guys. She says, I would love this. I says, well, if you go to Pepperdine, chances are you're going to live in that side of the country. And that's a good area. Pepperdine's beautiful. You're not going to marry Southern guys there. I may have been wrong, but she didn't go away. But she said she attributed to that conversation she had with me. I don't even know why we had that story. But before we don't click yet, are there any other questions of me before I close out? Are there any questions, not just about me, but about my office or about this discussion? Is there any takeaway from it? Anything that you liked, disliked about it? Did anybody here feel like they learned something, or that if they didn't learn something, you at least thought about something differently? Anything? I see some head nods. If you're nodding your head, you throw me a bone here. Say you're smiling and nodding. Work with it. What did you think? What is this discussion? Yeah, you. What was this discussion?
Well, it's interesting to see, I guess, what the goals of masculinity, I guess, are. And I guess it's something, like, I kind of thought about my perspective on it, and I think that I would view masculinity more as being the second kind of set of pictures that you showed us. I think that I would, my ideals would hold someone to that standard versus the other standard.
That's an extremely good point you made, and I would say a red letter day in my life when I realized that I should redefine masculinity. I had a truck. You would call a Honda Ridgeline a truck. That's what it was. All my redneck friends were like, Ridgeline's not a truck. It's a gentleman's truck. I was driving a Ridgeline, And my son was 6 months old, and I was going to pick up some of my buddies. We were going to see, actually, we were going to see The Hangover. It was boys' night, and getting in the truck, and as they got in the back seat, I had to move get the kids' seat out the back. And as they got into the car, they're like, Alan, you got like 3 rolled up dirty diapers in the back of your truck, and one they're rolled up, you know, baby like infant diapers, and I'd roll them up, and I'd change my kid like the day before, like 2 or 3 diapers. And there's a diaper rolling around the floor of your truck. It's like, it's so hard to be manly when you got rolled up diapers rolling around your car. I said, yeah, I had a good run. It's over for me. I'm now totally domestic teams. You know what I love? Spending time, I was at the Carolina game last night, baseball game with my little boy. Daughter went home with my wife, and I had daddy-son time. And, you know, being able to groom him and train him up and raise him up, are things that I just really enjoy doing. That's the most masculine thing I can do is just create that kind of value in my son. And not allow my son or myself to be defined by society's ideas of what it means to be masculine. So don't get me wrong. Those guys, Rocky and Arnold, all they're tough guys. They're masculine. But that doesn't have to be the only form of masculinity. Yes, ma'am?
With those, especially Achilles, he was a non-working. He did have a vulnerability. With the guys in the second position, they looked like they could do everything. You know, they could cook, they could clean, they could this, and that's, again, like, I agree with her, that's my point of how do you know masculinity is wanting to do everything.
And get a little anthropological, that's what people say that word. You know, back in the day, strength is how you survive. We don't need to be muscle-bound brutes. We're all supposed to survive today. In fact, you ever watch that show Revolution? It comes on NBC, all the lights go out. There was a guy in that show, like the second or third episode. He was like a senior executive at Google. He was a multi-millionaire, and a billionaire actually, but he was a billionaire. He was powerful, and all the lights went out in the world. And 15 years later, he was with a band of roughnecks trying to get around the countryside and avoid being killed because there was no electricity. He said the electricity went out. I went from being rich and powerful to being harmless like a puppy dog. He said we went back to the dark ages, and I was kind of interested in this because, when there wasn't electricity, we didn't have an internet, there was no Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, or any of these. Those guys are now the Billy Badasses. They're the guys that are changing things. And the meathead, unless you can be a professional athlete, you can be a meathead, you're not going to get very far in life. That's all you got is wrong. You got to have brain. So our society's changed and we've evolved. I'm going to leave you with the gold standard of what it truly means to be masculine. It's always good to have context, and for men, I want you to have something to kind of a starting point of which to judge all things masculine, so that you have a frame of reference and context for what to go to, what you ultimately want to end up being one day. Ladies, for you, this gold standard of what it means to be masculine could be something for you to desire. Something like this. So why don't we go ahead and look at the gold standard of masculinity right there. There you go. Click over to the next one. That was a joke, by the way. This is ways to reach our office. If you're fancy with all the technology, you can take a picture of that and scan and go to the website, scag.gov. We have a lot of internship opportunities. One thing I really enjoy, I always enjoyed working with college students. Like I said, I had people mentor me when I was in college, and it changed my life. And people who probably I've maybe spent 2 days with said something that maybe got in my head and helped me out. And so I hope tonight, talking to you, is to some benefit. But if you're interested in working in our office a little bit more, it's a great office to work in. It's 4 blocks from here, from the State House grounds. And if you're interested in being an intern, come check us out. And if you don't want to be an intern, but you want to set up, maybe come see me one day for a cup of coffee. I've actually had students. I spoke at the pre-law, and I actually had some students take me up on this. 2 or 3 weeks later, they came up and had a cup of coffee. We talked about the practice of law, talked about what it means to be in politics. We're interested in politics, others are interested in doing other things. If you want to talk about our remarks tonight, or about those things, or about family, whatever, coming up, we'll have a cup of coffee. If you want to do an internship, we'll talk about that. There's only so many. So if you can't get it this next semester, maybe we'll get you on a list for the semester to follow. You can do it for credit or paid positions, or some people just like to come and get the experience. I really appreciate you for having me, guys. I really enjoyed myself, and I hope you found this not boring. Anything above not boring is gravy, and I'll take it. But this has been fun for me. You've all been good to participate, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And I'll stick around for a few minutes to answer any additional questions. That's it.
Thank you so much.